watching from all around the world. I'm Errol Barnett.
And I'm Rosemary Church. We are following breaking news on missing EgyptAir Flight 804.
Greek and Egyptian rescue crews right now are searching the southern Mediterranean by air and by sea for an Egypt airplane that disappeared from radar. That Airbus A320 was carrying 66 people from Paris to Cairo. The airline says last contact with the jetliner was 280 kilometers or 175 miles off the Egyptian coast. That's about halfway between Greece and Egypt.
Egyptian aviation officials tell Reuters they believe the plane probably crashed into the sea. EgyptAir says there was a distress signal nearly 2 hours after last contact, or that timeline is a little murky. We're not completely sure of it. We believe that could mean a distress signal from the plane's emergency beacons, but again, we don't know that either.
And there are widespread implications to this single flight. We've learned the nationalities of the passengers on board. EgyptAir says the list includes 30 Egyptians, 15 French nationals and 2 Iraqi nationals. And you see the list also includes passengers from Britain, Belgium, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Chad, Portugal, Algeria, Canada and Sudan.
Our Ian Lee joins us now from Cairo, Egypt, where the flight was, of course, supposed to land safely. Ian, let's talk about this distress signal, because it seems to be that we need some sort of clarification. It now appears that they're backing away from the possibility that this was from the plane. What are you learning on that?
Yeah, this is where all the question marks are right now, because this distress signal, we're told, was issued at 4:26 a.m. local time here in Cairo, that the armed forces detected this signal. But the signal comes almost 2 hours after the plane disappeared from radar. We talked to the vice president of EgyptAir to clarify about this. He told us that this signal could possibly be from something else in the Mediterranean, a boat in the Mediterranean. He said that it is not certain that it is from the plane, but he also said that it is possible that after the plane disappeared, if it did crash, that they would be able to receive a distress signal from the plane. So really not many answers there. That is what we know, but Egyptian officials are looking into that right now. The armed forces are scouring the area, looking for any sort of debris, any survivors. That is their main mission right now. But if this distress signal was from the plane after 2 hours, it could give some hope that there possibly are some survivors. But at this point, we just don't know any more about that distress signal, or in that matter, if they found the plane or not.
Yeah, it is always such a fluid situation, particularly just a matter of hours after a situation like this. A plane goes missing. We don't know what exactly happened. We are trying to piece it together as we go along. And of course, we learnt too, Ian, that EgyptAir's vice president was saying now that he's not confirming that the plane crashed. This is interesting, because we heard from some officials that they were assuming that it had crashed into the Mediterranean. What are you learning about that?
That's right. And we talked to the vice president just a short time ago, and he told us that they are not confirming the crash, even though we are hearing other reports. But it does seem like this plane would have crashed by now. It's been almost 6 hours. It's been 6 hours since the plane disappeared. It should have been here in Cairo. If they aren't able to detect it anywhere else, the likelihood really increases by the minute that this plane did indeed crash, although Egyptian officials, again, the ones we are talking to, the vice president of EgyptAir, still not going that far as to say that this plane has crashed.
And just very quickly, Ian, of course, we're looking at these pictures from the airport there. A lot of distressed family and friends, the loved ones waiting to hear more information on this. What sort of support systems are in place for them?
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing here, Rosemary, is we need to remember that there were 66 people on board this flight, 56 passengers. There were 2 infants. There was 1 child. We've seen some family members here at the airport. coming in. EgyptAir has a hall for them to meet with translators, to meet with counselors, to meet with doctors who are here to assist them. EgyptAir officials are also there to assist them. And as you can imagine, emotions are running high right now. You do see these family members coming to the airport, a lot of them in tears, a lot of them wondering what's going on, many of them walking quickly past the press, not giving any comments, and probably very distraught and can be justified. Right now, though, EgyptAir trying to assist them and get them the information they need about their loved ones. And also need to mention there were 10 crew members aboard that plane. Their families also wanting answers as well.
Very distressing situation there for people in Egypt and in France and across other nations all involved in this. Thank you so much to our Ian Lee bringing us up to date on the situation there from Cairo in Egypt.
Let's cross now to the location where this flight originated, which is Paris. Our senior international correspondent Jim Bitterman is there and can update us on the latest information. Jim, as is the case in Cairo, surely relatives and friends of passengers on that plane will also be heading to the Charles de Gaulle airport there for more information. What can you tell us about the emergency meeting, we understand, which is set to get underway?
Well, it's already underway, Earl. In fact, this is a fairly standard procedure. Basically, it's a way for the president to make sure he's up to speed on what is happening. He gathers his ministers in any kind of a crisis here. This is, of course, fits that definition. So that meeting started about a half hour ago with the top ministers. We assume it's probably the defense minister, prime minister, the minister of foreign affairs, and others who are gathered at the presidential palace. And basically to get everyone up to speed and on the same page as far as their information is concerned. Out of the airport, there's in fact been a couple of crisis centers set up. One which is secret, and that's for the families. It's being its location is not being disclosed, and it's not clear that a lot of families are gathering, because the fact is that these people would have said goodbye to their loved ones 3 hours before the crash was reported. So it's not necessarily the case that they would go back to the airport for information. The other crisis center is for the press and others who might want to talk to the press, and that's been set up at a hotel out there. So they've got a couple of crisis centers there. There's a center of crisis operations at the foreign ministry with a phone number where people can call if they want to have the latest information from the foreign ministry. And that, again, is kind of standard operating procedure when there's any kind of a tragedy in the making like this. So a number of things that are going on here, but basically they're waiting to see what happens as far as the Egyptian search effort is concerned. President Hollande, spoke to President Sisi of Egypt earlier this morning, in fact, just a couple of hours after the flight was reported missing, and offered to give any help he could as far as the French assets in the Mediterranean are concerned in the search effort. It's not clear that they've asked for any, because that area, as we've said in some of the earlier in the broadcast here, that area is very intensively covered by any number of other navies, so there may be no necessity for the French to get involved. But they are going to be involved in the investigation, the aftermath of this. If it's confirmed the plane has crashed, it's still not confirmed, I guess, from the Egyptian air side. But in any case, they'll be deeply involved in the investigation because of the fact that there are French people on board, that the plane left from here, and it's a French-made aircraft, an Airbus. The BEA, which is the main accident investigating agency here, not only for aircraft accidents, but other kinds of accidents, they're going to be heavily involved, and we've heard in media reports here that they have teams ready to take off in the next few hours for Cairo. Errol?
All right, and as you've been speaking, Jim, we're looking at live pictures, I believe, from Charles de Gaulle Airport from the press crisis meeting. It's 9:09 in the morning there, and certainly as people wake up and learn of what's taken place, interest in this will build as the day goes on, but we'll certainly gather more information as we get it and share it with our viewers. Jim Bitterman live for us in Paris. Rosemary.
All right, we do want to bring in Jeffrey Thomas now. He is the editor-in-chief of airlineratings.com and he joins us live from Perth, Australia. Always good to talk to you and get your expert advice on this. Of course, we're getting information here from our own Richard Quest, our aviation correspondent. He's saying about this distress signal, which is very much front and centre right now. He's saying that his best guess is that this is some form of an activated water device or crash device, the emergency locator transmitter, ELT. Now, he said it could be a life raft, perhaps, or something else that's broken apart from the plane. How important, how critical could this be in the search effort, do you think?
Oh, look, the electronic locator beacon is very important, and there are numerous reports now that the various authorities, search authorities, have located this beacon, and there's zeroing in on it. And I think this is where there's been some confusion about the distress call. I don't believe there was a distress call from the pilots as such. This distress call, in fact, is an electronic one, which is what they're zeroing in on at the moment. We're also getting unconfirmed reports, and I must stress they are unconfirmed from several sources, in fact 4 different sources, that there was an explosion seen in the night sky by a couple of merchant ships in the area. So the scenario that we are seeing is what we originally thought was the case, that there has been a catastrophic failure of this aircraft and it has impacted the sea not far from where contact was last lost with it.
When you hear that sort of information coming in, seeing an explosion in the night sky, what do you think in those terms? Because earlier you were thinking that you were eliminating mechanical problems.
Look, yes, I don't believe that this is a mechanical issue, simply because of the fact that the plane simply disappeared off radar, off military radar, off commercial radar. There was, to our knowledge, no communication from the pilot or co-pilot themselves. The distress call that we had recently been told about, we now believe that's an electronic distress call from the aircraft's beacons. So the analysis is, at the moment, given the information we have, is that this is a catastrophic explosion and not mechanical.
Right, and we do want to emphasise, of course, to our viewers that these witness reports of an explosion in the sky are not confirmed at this point. It's always a very situation, as we keep reminding our viewers when we're covering breaking news like this, particularly associated with aircraft going missing, and trying to figure out what has happened here. But talk to us about how you work through that process of elimination and how you come to your decision that this is a catastrophic situation.
Well, we obviously have been covering this industry for over 40 years, and we've looked at many, many tragedies. We also look at the sources of information. That's very important, as you alluded to earlier, with the jet crash in October last year out of Egypt. One of the problems we had was significant misinformation from authorities. So you tend to learn that some authorities are very good at disseminating information, particularly when there's only one source of it, rather than the military being involved. Politicians being involved, the airline being involved, and other commentators. When you've got one reliable source, you can zero in on that. But when you, and then on top of that, when you are getting reputable news agencies like yourselves reporting things and knowing the great lengths that CNN